going on, folks? Johnny Blaze here, and the Switch 2 is out. I did what I said I would do. I got the midnight pickup on June 5th, and just want to kind of walk through the overall console design, how I feel about it, some of the games I played, and then a couple kind of final impressions, as well as whether I think this is a console that you should pick up. So let's get right into it. So why don't we go ahead and start with some of the negatives that I found on this console. The first thing that I noticed was the Joy-Con grip. I think people have said this in other videos, but it is a little awkward. I mean, overall, it's pretty much fine. It's just like the grip has like a kind of an edge to it that goes past the Joy-Cons, and it's going to feel like a little rough in some people's hands potentially. So keep that in mind. It's really not a big deal, but it is something that I noted. The next thing I wanted to touch on was the overall size of the console, and this is kind of a weird thing to point out as a con, but it's kind of something that comes with the territory. So the screen size is perfect. 7.9 inches is just the right amount to make it feel like you can sit down, put the kickstand up, and play without kind of missing out on things on the screen, as long as you're sitting kind of close to it. So that is really nice. But with the overall size of it, it's going to be a little hard to play this console in handheld mode, just because it's slightly too large, at least for me, and a little bit too heavy to comfortably hold it up and kind of like play. Let's say you're on like on a plane or something, and you don't have your little tray stand up. It's going to be tough to hold the game console up because it just gets a little weighty on your hands. So it's really kind of something that comes with the territory of a larger console. But I guess compared to the Nintendo Switch, which is a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to hold, and a little bit lighter, the Switch 2 doesn't really have as convenient of a form factor for handheld play. And since the console is a little bit more unwieldy due to the size, it is a little bit easier to drop. And I think if you're an adult and you're careful, you should be fine. But so keep that in mind. It's a little bit more droppable, which could be a problem, especially with the added weight. To young kids, it's less of a console you can kind of fully grip with one hand and carry it around. Last thing I wanted to point out explicitly was a couple concerns about the mouse mode, which I've used mostly in the menu. There's not exactly a whole lot of games out, and I'm definitely not buying the $10 tech demo thing. But when you put on the mouse attachment, which is basically like a small mini mouse pad that kind of goes like on a rail onto the Joy-Cons with a little wrist strap, I've noticed that at certain angles, the base of that rail thing can kind of push into the mouse pad surface that you're using, which could kind of affect your like the smoothness of using the Joy-Con in mouse mode. So we'll see, when other games come out, how that ends up shaking out. But for now, it is a little point of friction that some users could find to be problematic. Okay, let's get into some of the things I liked about this console. So first things first, the general form factor. It is enjoyable. The screen is really nice, much larger, and I know it's not an OLED, but it still looks really crisp. I also like the kind of the matte finish of the console. The colors look cool. It's like a matte black with if you look really closely, almost like a little sparkle effect to it, and as well as the accents that kind of show where this console came from with the original pastel red and blue from the base Switch. Some other things, so the USB-C port on the top of the console. I don't know why I'm so excited about that USB-C port, but it really feels like a game changer as far as a lot of different things. So you can attach peripherals to it. I tried using the Switch 2 Pro controller, plugging it into the top, and it just works, which is super cool. Of course, you have the charging woes that came with the base Switch, where you had to plug things in, plug a charging cable in through the bottom, which is impossible to do when you're also, when you have the standout. So it's really very convenient to have a charging port in the top. So that's cool. The kickstand is also something I thought was really cool. It has a really wide angle. It's a metal kickstand, really durable, really nice mechanism on how it opens and unopens with like a really solid click as you close it. Yeah, it's not the flat, solid panel like the OLED Switch, but it's still really, really a nice kickstand. And then moving on to the Joy-Cons, they feel really good. The additional size helps a lot for when you're using a single Joy-Con as a controller. I like the buttons on the like the inside of them, the L and R buttons. So if you're playing like Mario Kart or Smash using just one of the Joy-Cons, it's definitely much more viable than the little claw grip you would have to use for the base Switch. As far as the magnetic attachment, it feels really, really sharp. One concern I do have is how that's going to affect the console over the coming years when they're not weak magnets, right? So you take that Joy-Con and you kind of like smash it in almost. At least that's how it sounds. And at some point, I'm worried that might damage some internals or maybe damage the Joy-Cons. So I guess we'll see how that ends up turning out. If people start reporting that their Joy-Con is breaking their Switch or their Switch is breaking their Joy-Con, we'll, update my impressions here. As far as the HD rumble on the Joy-Cons, it's something that I didn't think about, and I hadn't really thought about it in my entire gaming, life. But once, I feel like there was a moment when I was playing Mario Kart World, and it just kind of clicked that the HD rumble actually feels extremely lifelike. For example, if you run into like a Bob-omb cart and you blow up your racer, it feels a lot more tactile than other consoles I've used. And that's something that I can't really put into words. But to kind of say what my experiment was, I tried playing Mario Kart World in the open world and closing my eyes and deciding what was happening on the screen just based off of the HD rumble. And I could tell a lot of things just based off of what kind of haptic sensations I was getting. I could tell if I bumped into a cart. I could tell if I hit a wall and couldn't move anymore. I could tell if, I guess, nothing was happening and I was just driving straight. And then a lot of things in between, like, if I hit a boost pad or if I bumped into an item, if I used an item, different things like that. So it's definitely like maybe an undersold feature of this console. And it's another thing we'll see how it looks in the future when they have more games for it. So all in all, the Switch concept is basically what I would consider a perfect design. Basically, the combination of things. You have the handheld console that can also become a TV console or home console, that hybrid setup, two controllers that can either be used as one controller with all of the functionality of a regular controller, or it can be split into half and basically just given to someone else, while retaining most of the functionality of a full controller. So there's no changes there. This is a Switch 2. The only differences are, I guess it's way more powerful, for one. Controllers are better. It's basically better in every single way. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the launch lineup, which is really underwhelming, I'll say. And I think they tried to kind of supplement it. Obviously, you have backwards compatibility, so that massive library of Switch games will work just fine. Then you have Mario Kart World and basically just that and Cyberpunk, which are both really good games and tell you a lot about what their intentions are, right? So Mario Kart World is telling you, here's a multiplayer game that uses a lot of the strengths of this console to do things that the Switch one couldn't do, and here's something you can play with friends online or local co-op, and here's something that can use game chat. It's telling you, like, look out for more things like that. And then when you talk about Cyberpunk, it's telling you, like, this console is very powerful and can basically run one of the most difficult games to run. Like, you could call it a current gen game with very few concessions. I know the frame rates are not as good, but it's not buggy and it's not too laggy either, from what I understand. I think the main concession would be the crowd density, different things like that. So it's a very viable way to play Cyberpunk. But despite that, there's really not a whole lot else. And I think if you didn't want to play either of those games, it's really hard to put the money down and buy this console right now. And that kind of feeds into how I feel about this console and the title of this video, where I'm seeing such a nice version of a Switch, right? A Switch Pro, an upgraded Switch, whatever you want to call it. A design that, a lot of people love and I love myself. And there's really not a whole lot to do with it yet. So when I play this console, when I open it up and I hop onto Mario Kart World for the 15th time to do some P-Switch missions and occasionally a couple Grand Prix races, I really get this feeling of, like, I would say excitement, right? So they've shown what they can do with this console, from a couple of these launch games, a couple of the like the texture updates, the graphics updates for previous games, and it's really amazing. And I just know when I see the next title, the next AAA game, you know, if you look at like whatever Metroid ends up being, the Metroid 4 game, or let's say Duskbloods, which has a lot of elements of Souls games with like the PvE kind of setup that's going to take advantage of all of the features of this console. I just know those are going to be incredible experiences. But right now, it's just a great console with not a whole lot to do on it. So yeah, that's really my final takeaway when it comes to, do I recommend this console? It really depends on how you feel about the launch titles. I think that they are a little underwhelming, especially with such an incredible console. I think if you don't mind waiting for Nintendo to flesh out this launch lineup and add a couple of more games that really put this hardware to the test, then feel free to buy it right now. You're definitely not missing out if you don't, though. I think you can wait a little bit if you want. The console will still be there in the next 6 months when there's a couple of more games to play on it. So those are my thoughts. It's really hard to give you guys a full review of what this console is without taking it through years of use, right? We'll see how the magnets hold up. We'll see how the fans and the cooling holds up, and we'll see how it can handle the day-to-day life through handheld mode, docked mode, playing different titles, things like that. So yeah, those are my impressions. As always, thanks everyone for watching, and let me know if there's something you would want me to cover in the future. Take care.